Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson. Guys, I like to bring you a weekly recap on this. And I certainly don't go into the category of hater. I go into a little bit different category. I'm not just a fan. I'm not just a spectator. I'm also trying to learn at all times. And we are in an industry that is ever changing. I mean, just by example, when I started in this game, this was the pay-per-view business first and foremost. It is not the pay-per-view business first and foremost anymore. That is an arm of it. But to illustrate that point, because I've made that before and I have people in the comment section, and they're completely lost. How I could say that, or why is it that I believe that they've changed? So let me just slow down very simply, but let you know from my experience, okay? 1993 is the first time I ever saw mixed martial arts. And from 1993 until 1995, I saw mixed martial arts one way and the same way, which is I would keep my eyes open at the local movie rental checkout. And 2 to 3 months after an event had happened, it would make it to VHS. And so I could go in and rent it. And the internet wasn't around in 93. The first time I ever heard the word email was 94. But the first time I ever had an email was 96. So even when the internet was around, it took a long time to catch on. And nobody had the internet in their hand. The term smartphone did not come along until just short of 2008. So I'm just trying to share for you, like, sports are one thing that you have to have live. Sports and news are the only two things, but you have to have them live. Well, not prior to the internet, on not something as small and fringe of a niche as mixed martial arts. Nobody was discussing it. There was no chance that you were going to run into somebody that was there, or that had rented that VHS before you did, and you're going to have a spoiler. So I watched this way until 95. Now, in 1995, I had started college, and they were going to hold something on New Year's. So I guess officially closer to 1996, but it was called the Ultimate, and Tank Abbott was going to be part of it, and Tank Abbott had come out and trained with my head coach, Mark Schultz, at the school I was currently attending, Brigham Young University. And I remember where I went to watch that. It was very hard to find somebody that had it. I remember how excited I was, and that was the first time that I was able to watch it on pay-per-view. Moving forward, the only way I was able to watch it was pay-per-view. And eventually something came along called the Pride Fighting Championship, and they were also on pay-per-view. And in 2004, I got to attend my first ever live event. So now, instead of having to watch it late on VHS, or getting to watch it live on pay-per-view, but waiting all those months in between, I'm finally at it live. And when my live experience ended, I go back home and I continue to watch it on pay-per-view. And along comes a year called 2012. And in 2012, a deal came along and was struck between the UFC and 21st Century Fox. And Fox was bringing us, and you'd seen this through The Ultimate Fighter on Spike as well, regular content that was a contest of mixed martial arts. It was the first time you didn't have to wait for it to be delayed, see it on VHS, get a ticket, hope to be there live in attendance, or watch it on pay-per-view. It was a changing of the guard for our industry as a whole. And it was an important thing. If you wanted to make money within an industry, it's important that you understand the industry, so you can understand the game that needs to be played, or the manipulation of the rules that needs to be done if you yourself would like to be involved and succeed. And I had guys all around me that did not make the most simple and basic of observations, including the ones I just laid out for you now. They had no idea. And we had media all around us that had no idea what the actual business was. And you had very good promoters who knew people were trying to get into their business in their wheelhouse, and they knew how important it was to keep them out. What are the finances? What can be monetized? Where do the reserves come from? It is so important that nobody fully understand that. That the promoters began to give two pieces of information, and they would give it all the time. They would give the live gate, and they would allow a speculation for the pay-per-view, even if they were to deny it or say, we will not talk about that. They made sure that the live gate and the pay-per-view was discussed at every single press conference. And the reason they did that was because they knew over time they could get the smartest, most observant members of the crowd to believe that that's what two revenue streams that kept the lights on. We're in the live gate and we're in the pay-per-view business, the end. And they accepted and they believed that for a meaningful amount of time. I don't know, and as I look at Mike Tyson and Jake Paul, I don't know what Netflix's new plan is. But I do trust very much that they have a new plan. Netflix single-handedly saved comedy. Are you aware of that? Like if you were an aspiring comedian, you were a little kid, you wanted to grow up and you wanted to be a comedian. And you don't meet a whole bunch of those. Like if you go back to yourself and you just think of all the kids you went to school with, sitting around and talking, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? Can you remember any boys or girls that said, I want to be a stand-up comedian? Probably not. I had one, Matt Silver, who then actually did it. Matt saw his dream through and he started performing. He's a very funny guy, but I'm just sharing with you, it's very rare. And it became even more rare and people stopped dreaming of going out and doing it until Netflix came along. And Netflix showed you, no, you can still be rich, you can be famous, you can be a star, you can have that stage to yourself, you can have people world around stopping what they're doing and paying money to hear you with that microphone telling jokes. Netflix did that. They revolutionized it. Absolutely they did. So my guess is they have a plan for combat, and their plan is going to be very disruptive to the current model. But the current model has changed and been disrupted since I began following it in 1993. So I'm curious about this. And Mike Tyson and Jake Paul are still going to have some principles that they're going to have to follow. They're going to have some ingredients that must be part of this. Somebody is doing a very good job with Mike Tyson. Somebody has grabbed a hold of Mike early and said, Mike, every week, I'm going to feed you a line. I'm going to feed you an angle. We're going to video it, deliver it the best you can, take it out to this new thing that you didn't have when you're competing. It's called social media. Just trust me on this. And Mike has said, okay. At one point, Mike was wearing a shirt, said sign the contract, but that was on the shirt, and it had like this line with an X to it, and that's where you were supposed to write Jake Paul. I mean, it was very simple, but it hadn't been done before. Had that caught on, now you got a merchandising opportunity. Right? I mean, there was something there. The person that thought to do that, good job. It was creative. Not to mention Mike didn't go too far to where it looked like he was performing or blatantly reading somebody else's lines as a way to hype a fight. It was short. It was concise. It was something. Jake and Mike, while being used for something different. This is not to see who can outbox who in yesterday's guard and the new guard. It's not about that. There's a model that needs to be tested by Netflix, and they need somebody to come in and do it. But with that said, all fights do have to have an answer or a question of why. And the cute stuff and the blurbs or the t-shirts and the here's the X and sign your name here. There has to be a reason why you're fighting. And that one is going to be very tough. Like when they get their collective heads together, they need to make sure that they have a creative person that begins to figure that out. And the story's there, by the way. Mike Tyson can be coming back to stop Jake Paul. Jake Paul is making more money, getting more attention, selling out arenas faster. He's getting all of the top billing. He's got the biggest press conferences. He's becoming a face of a sport that does not belong. He did not come up the hard way. He did not come up through the golden gloves. He didn't have his single mother drag him in to a gym to try to keep him disciplined and off the streets like so many great boxing stories. It's a very different story. So Mike Tyson is coming in to save boxing. He's coming back off the shelf, something he doesn't even want to do, but he's doing it for the greater good of the sport. And that's a really big part of it. And they haven't taken it from that angle. In very real life, should Mike fail, that is how, and that is the only way how, you're going to get Canelo to step to Jake Paul. Jake versus Tyson is the precursor to getting Jake what he ultimately wanted from day one, which was a shot at Canelo. And if Mike begins to tell the story that I am here to save boxing, that is why I'm here. It is not about the money. I am here to risk my health. I'm here to come off the shelf to stop a guy who's taken all the attention, all the money, and all the headlines. And if Mike is to fail, that is where you have Canelo. But now you have a story, and now you have a reason why. At this point, they have no story. They have no why. The bigger problem, they don't know that that's missing. They believe with the fame of Mike Tyson, they believe with the notoriety of Jake Paul, they believe bringing them together and something about Dallas, Texas, and 80,000 and somehow Netflix weighs into it. That is not a story. It's not enough. That's a way for four really well-known entities to all lose together. And I'm only bringing you the weekly recap because I am interested. I do want to see what they're doing here. And regardless if this turns a profit or it doesn't, they're working the kink out over at Netflix. They have an idea. They're moving forward. They're playing a different game. So I'm sharing that with you because this doesn't have to be an overnight success, but to have something here and do make it a success. And I know if I was involved, my ego is directly tied to those numbers. Nobody's ever lost $1 working with me, but I will make sure that they don't lose $1. I will study that whole thing. I will see what's going on. I will know what cracks need filled. It's a little bit different, but it doesn't make it any less important. So that's your weekly recap on Mike and Jake. But eventually, they have got to figure out why and what is this about. And once they get there, bring it to the audience. Let that story be told. You're going to have a hard time having a story better than one that I just gave you. And it's true. If Jake wants Canelo, and Jake has wanted Canelo since he started this entire game, then it's got to be Jake taking on boxing as a whole, which is where Mike Tyson's the white knight to save boxing. And if we do get that story out, and Canelo does come forward and say, yes, as a matter of fact, it's going to really upset me if a non-boxing Jake Paul takes out everyone's icon, I will step in and fill. It's true. There's no reason to hide it. We're in need of a why. I'm suggesting for you we don't need to make one up. I'm suggesting for you it's already there. I'm just reminding you they've yet to spell it out as clearly as I just did.